This is Champagne Problems, where we come together to explore the gray areas of drinking. This is a judgment-free zone where we can all take a look at how we make decisions about our relationship with alcohol. Welcome back, curious ones. We've got a special guest in the house today. Our good friend Chef Sam Diminich will be gracing us in the studio. Chef Sam is flying high right now as he makes culinary waves in the Charlotte area. He's the executive chef and owner of Your Farms, Your Table, a high-quality local ingredient meal order service. He's the personal chef of Carolina Panthers star Christian McCaffrey. He beat out Bobby Flay on his famous show, taking him down with a lobster risotto. He's a month out from opening his own brick-and-mortar culinary project, Restaurant Constance, and he's the co-leader of the Charlotte chapter of Ben's Friends, which we all know about through one of our previous episodes. Okay, he's a stud. We got it. Let's talk to Chef Sam. Chef Sam Diminich, welcome to Champagne Problems.
Hey, how you doing?
We're doing great, man. How you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Glad you're here.
Super happy to be here.
Been looking forward to this one.
Same.
You know, we have a relationship with Sam here, Chef Sam. He's a friend of the podcast, number one. Number two, we did an event together. What, six? I mean, God, that might have been.
Time for another one.
Six, yeah,
it is.
Long enough to where it's time for another one. Always wanted him to come on the show. We've always talked about it, and it just didn't happen till now, but here we are.
Yeah,
Perfect.
timing's perfect, right?
Perfect. We're all ready.
Yeah.
All right. So for those listeners who don't know who you are, which must be very few, why don't you give us a little background, who you are, where you're from, all that good stuff. Who the hell are you?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Cool. I am chef owner of Your Farms, Your Table. Father of two great kids. Community advocate, much like you guys are. Love the recovery community. You know, been in Charlotte since 2004.
Yeah. Where were you before then?
I've traveled a lot. I'm originally from Myrtle Beach, but I went to school in New York. Yeah, Myrtle. I made it out.
Myrtle.
I made it out. I went to school in New York, and then I've worked in Mexico City. I've worked in New York. I worked in D.C., Philadelphia. Traveled a bunch, cooking.
Yeah.
You know, but settled here in 2004, and then had a little detour.
Light detour. We'll dig into that in a minute.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yep.
Nice
me in
choice
South
of
Carolina.
words.
Yeah. Yep. God had plans for me in 2013, 2014, so I followed that path and returned in 17.
Nice. So give us a little bit more of the childhood. So the growing up in the kind of food industry in Myrtle Beach and family cooks and all that stuff. I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah. There's kind of like two layers to, you know, kind of growing up the way I did in a big Italian Catholic family in Myrtle Beach. Like we're on paper, it was beautiful. We had restaurants. You know, I'm one of five. I have four siblings, all sisters. That's probably another podcast right there, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't think
Pros
I knew
and
that,
cons.
man. Wow.
Yeah.
Where do you fall on the...
I'm in the middle.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, my parents met young and had kids young. And for a while there, like we had a solid like family unit. My dad's restaurants, the family's restaurants were going really, really well. And then something along the way, just there was just a major shift in my family, my family unit, and then the business side of things too. It was like kind of like, so the first half of my childhood was like golden, and we all went to private school. We all, you know, we're all in athletics and had a pretty well-rounded life for the most part, you know. And then like the second half, it was like the parents got divorced. You know, we fell on hard times financially from a business standpoint.
Yeah.
You know, my grandfather founded the restaurants that we had, and he passed away in like 82. And I guess it took about 5 to 8 years for the rest of my dad and his siblings to spend all the money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then things got real. And then like, but also Myrtle Beach economically took like a very commercial turn. And I don't think, I'm in business now, you know, so I can kind of reflect on that with a little bit of experience. I don't think they were prepared for that, you know, and kind of laid the foundation for sustainability in the restaurants that we owned.
Were they all in Myrtle?
All in Myrtle.
What were they?
We had like 3 Italian restaurants. We had a breakfast place, and we had like a Tex-Mex. We had a couple of Tex-Mex
nice.
places. Yeah, family good cooks. So that was like my childhood. And then, you know, I think my parents got divorced in 89, 90. My mom remarried and moved. And then I stayed with my dad in Myrtle. So anyway,
how old are you at
so
that?
the family was fractured, like about 14, 15.
Did you work in
Prime
the
time.
restaurant like all growing up? I mean, were you there? Yeah.
Yeah, like that was the deal. Like you
I know
would go
that
to,
life.
yeah, I would go to school, and I would go to baseball practice, ride my bike home. You know what I mean? Like homework, check in, whatever, and then ride the bike to the restaurant, walk in the back door. And what was cool about that is like it was busy. There was like rock and roll was blaring. You know what I mean? I can say this now. I look back on it romantically because like the restaurant was busy. All the line cooks were all dialed in. Think like bandanas and you know what I mean, and just rolling. And it was just like
80s Myrtle Beach.
80s Myrtle, yeah. As a young boy,
Can-Am. Remember
you know
Can-Am?
what I mean? Yeah, I do. But the waitresses were hustling and bustling, and it was just a really like I was just completely attracted to that environment, that atmosphere, that pulse, that energy, everything about it. And then like. We were a family-owned restaurant, so we had like the restaurant. When the restaurant was busy, it was all business. When the restaurant was busy, we turned the jam box around that was sitting in the window to the backyard, and we had a basketball hoop in the back there. So we'd play 3-on-3 between tickets. You know what I mean? Like it was very old world. But what also happened, and this was like this is basically the foundational beginnings of my relationship with alcohol and drugs, was like everybody drank.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? There was like shitty beer.
No.
I'll tell you that,
But
like
beer.
Keystone, so that they could work all night, right? Stay hydrated. But yeah, no, that was it. I mean, Coors Light, Keystone Light, Busch Light, they were flowing all night. And then in between tables or end of the night, you know what I mean? Like the joints would come out, you know what I mean? The trips to the stairwell in the backyard, or we'd be, lined up to take the trash out. Yeah, I mean, all the things, right?
I got it.
All the things. Yeah, no, it's my turn. You must need a hand.
Yeah.
But that was my childhood. And then, my mom moved away. My dad was he loved this, man, but he just wasn't really into being a dad. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if he wasn't equipped, wasn't into it, combination of both, you know what I mean? But when it was just me and him, I was kind of on my own.
Oh, that restaurant industry will take a toll on you too if you're the man at the helm.
Yeah, I sure will. It's
father of 5 kids. He's got multiple restaurants. He's fallen on a little financial strife. I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
Right? I think we all get it. It's tough.
Yeah, man. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like the formative years, there wasn't a whole lot going on right there, so there was a lot. And this kind of affected, when I look back on recovery and my journey with sobriety, like a lot of the tools that I had to utilize then, which was basically figured out on my own, you know what I mean? And a lot of willpower based decisions, like that all started then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When it was just me and him.
Yeah.
I'm 16 years old, trying to figure life, girls, like school, like all the things. It was like, just figure it out.
Yeah.
Handle it.
Right.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
And if you don't,
I'll do it
pretend,
my way.
Pretend like you do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Don't complain too much when you do something and it hurts real bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just get back up, dust yourself off.
Yeah. So anyway, that was the intersection of I love cooking. Obviously, I still do it today, and I can't imagine life without it. But it was also like the intersection of drinking, the drugs, the atmosphere, the conditioning, so to speak.
Yeah.
Of what the next 30 years would look like.
Yeah. So what's the next step? So you said you went to school in New York?
Well, actually, I went to I give my dad credit for this. Like he did. I graduated high school after my junior year. I took summer classes. Like I just did not want to be there. I was not because I was a genius. I just hated it. I hated it.
My mom did that.
Not because of my intelligence. That was like, no, man. I was like, I am not into this. And I think they all knew it. And so I got to graduate. I took an elective in English in summer of 94. There were no SAT tests. There was no college visits, nothing like that. My sisters all did, but I never did. And so anyway, I remember I graduated, and then like a couple weeks later, like he kicked me off the couch. It was like, going to school. And I was like, I am? He was like, yeah. I was like, where? Tech school. It was like one of those dad moments where I made a call. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so he made a call out to culinary school. And next thing I
know.
know, he like threw some money at me. He was like, yeah, get some shoes and some knives or whatever. And then, be out there. And it was in Conway. And he was like, yeah, be out there at 8 o'clock. And so off I went.
Conway.
Yeah. It was out there by coastal Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that
Highway
was that. And then
Highway
about
9.
yeah, 501.
Is that
501.
what it is?
Yeah. Yeah. About the same time, I think he had made a call into this hotel restaurant for me to go work as well. So my life changed drastically. Like one minute I'm in high school, the next year I'm in tech school.
You're a man.
I didn't know I was going. Yeah, I know, right? And then I have this new job working for this classically trained chef. He was a hard ass. He made everything from scratch. And I was like immersed in this new experience. And of course, I already kind of loved cooking. I just didn't know how to do it yet. I knew how to do it in my dad's restaurant. But I couldn't like go into any other kitchen and really function, And so then, right then and there, I had an understanding, or I was experiencing like summertime peaches and tomatoes in the summertime, or why we didn't have tomatoes in the wintertime. You know what I mean? Like, so seasonal foods, fresh from scratch cooking, just passionate attention to detail, day-to-day operations.
Do you feel like that experience, kind of led you down the path that you're on now?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
I always consider like my relationship with food began with like my grandmother and my parents.
Yeah.
But my relationship with food on a professional level began there.
Right there. Yeah.
All right, so let's do the dirty. Let's get dirty. So tell us more about the journey to sobriety.
The journey?
Yeah. I mean, if you want, however you want to do it, man.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, okay. So I remember just like being in counselor's office at a young age, 14, 15. I remember being asked to go to AA meetings, 14, 15, 16 years old. Like you should probably go to this coffee shop.
That's an early
over
call
there.
there.
On 67th Avenue. Yeah. And,
no, I'm good.
Yeah. And it'd be like, for what? And just not, just not subscribing to that theory at all. And so while that was happening, again, it was like I leaned into what I was talking about with just like learning how to live life on my own. I just thought I would figure it out just like I figured everything else out, and so whenever things got kind of rough, alcohol or drugs were clearly getting in the way, I would figure my way out of that, whatever mess I was in. As we all know, it's one of those things where I could not outrun it. I could not outrun it. Now, I did have periods of abstinence throughout my life, only to be followed by periods of severe relapse and, and deeper bottoms. When I went to school in New York, the Culinary Institute of America, I went up there and I was very nervous about that. And I took that very seriously, and I didn't drink. I didn't do anything for my first 2 years, really up until I was guaranteed my graduation.
Was it hard? Like, I mean, were you
it was weird, man. It was weird. Like, it's one of those things, like for me, like I remember just drinking and using because I felt different. You know what I mean? Like there was something different about me than all my friends that I hung out with, most of them. And I remember if I want to feel like them, then I got to do what I got to do, to escape this reality. And so I go up to New York in this new experience, and I just didn't like. It was one of those situations where I was playing not to lose instead of playing to win.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Defense.
Yeah.
Defense. And I remember going up there for like a year and a half and just really just promising myself I would take this seriously, and I did well and I worked hard. But when it came to like socialization and hanging out with people, it was so awkward, man. It was so awkward because they're like, let me get this straight. So you don't drink at all? And I was like, nope. Sure don't. You know what I mean? Have you ever drank before? Kinda. You know what I mean? Like, I'm in college, man. You know, and so I held on to that as long as I could.
I mean, did you do that specifically because you knew that if you drank, you weren't going to be able to do what you needed to do?
100%.
Okay.
100%.
Well, that's pretty
You
cool that
learned
you
that
had that
at that
type
point.
of awareness
Yeah.
at that point where you just could cut it off
Yeah.
and
Yep.
pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do what you need to do.
Yeah. And, I mean, so at this point, I'd already done heroin. Like I've already smoked crack.
Yeah.
I've already done a bunch of acid. You know what I mean? So like I had a little resume to lean on.
Yeah.
Light
And I was
resume,
like,
light
I
resume.
You knew
And
that
I-
crack smoking during
I felt
culinary school
like-
ain't going to be functional.
There's no controlled crack smoking for Sam Diminich. But I felt like, this is my one opportunity to get out of Myrtle. It's my one opportunity in life. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. It's driven by fear, right? It's driven by 100 forms of fear. So I did that, and I did really well in academics, and I was super proud, and I felt esteemed. And then once I turned the corner, it's a 5-semester program. I got to semester 5, and I realized like I was definitely going to graduate. Like there was nothing I could do from where I was at,
Can't self-sabotage now.
except for like not show up for the last 3
Probably
weeks.
smoke some crack now.
I started drinking, and what's so crazy now, and I can laugh about it, is that I picked up exactly where I left off, only a little bit further.
Yeah.
And if you've ever relapsed, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I freak some fucking people out. And they were like, let me get this straight. So this is your first, you just drank a case of beer. Like, this is your first time drinking? I'm like,
Yep.
I'm really thirsty. It's been a long week. And so, but that is
man.
that's classic alcoholism.
Classic.
It's classic alcoholism, man.
Yep.
I held on to my seat for a year and a half, and I was in New York. I was in a strange place, and then I did my apprenticeship in Philadelphia, stranger place, and you know what I mean. And so, it just goes to show it's like it's not what it appears to be on the surface. Like alcoholism and recovery, it's an inside job, and I learned that the hard way when I was in New York.
Hey, when you were in New York, were you doing any program? Like, I mean, obviously you'd been to meetings and kind of understood that there was a program out there. Were you doing any of that, or were you just knuckling through the school?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I wanted to go to AA meetings.
Yeah.
Again, like I had no idea what that shit was about. I just knew that people had told me that in the past. Mm-hmm. And I went to our guidance counselor because I heard there was an AA meeting on campus and I wanted to go to this meeting, but it was on the opposite schedule that I was enrolled in. I think it was my schedule in school was like either AM or PM. And I think I was on PM, and I think the meetings were in the evening time, right? Like most meetings are. And so I remember going to the guidance counselor and be like, hey, can I switch my schedule? Can I just go to the mornings? Because I want to go to this Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to change my life. And she was like, nope.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Sorry,
sweet.
pal.
Good luck.
I didn't want to go anyway. You know what I mean? Like,
answered my decision.
Man, it's one of those things.
It's her fault.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I was like, okay, cool, awesome. Licensed to do whatever I want. Yeah. Appreciate that.
Oh, man.
Signed, sealed, and delivered by one of the greatest culinary schools in the world.
Oh man.
Right. Rock bottom-ish area.
So it's like that's a lot to unpack.
Let's start
here.
laughing.
Yeah.
huh?
So how did this progress? So
Yeah.
you get out of school, you start playing around a little bit. Then what?
Yeah, so I went from my fifth term, I pick up, we start drinking again, and next thing you know, we're going to Harlem. Like it, I mean, we weren't waiting, you know what I mean? So we were running drugs up and down the interstate in New York, and it dawned on me like this is not good.
I wanted to be a chef.
This is not good. So I graduate and I moved back to Myrtle Beach, but cat's out of the bag, man. You know what I mean? I can't stop. Opiates are in the picture. Alcohol's in the picture, uppers, downers, you know what I mean? Like everything under the sun,
all
right?
over the place.
And so, but I'm back in Myrtle Beach. I had to fulfill some contractual obligations. The hotel that I worked for previously helped me with my tuition, so I had to go back and work for them for about a year. Couldn't finish that, you know what I mean? And it quickly just became a hot mess. And so I left them. I wound up going to DC for a brief moment. Again, like running and gunning, drinking and drugging. And 9/11 happened, right? I was living in D.C. when 9/11 happened. And so I lost my job there, like a lot of people did. Had to move back to Myrtle Beach, go back and work for my dad again as a waiter. And that's when I met my children's mom. And we immediately began dating, and we got together. And soon after that, we were expecting our first child, Constance. As time went on, so did my alcoholism, and it did not get any better. If I wasn't drinking, then I was dabbling in drugs a little bit harder than I normally would. If I wasn't dabbling in drugs, I was drinking a little bit harder than I normally would. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And by 2004, actually 2003, I was in treatment again. And I'd already been to a couple detoxes.
Locally?
No, I was in a place called in Florence. I don't even remember the name of it. Yeah, but it was the first of a string of places, that I started going to. They shipped me off, and I'd come back and I'd make it for a couple weeks and then fall off. 2004, I go away again. At this point, I've got a police record. It's just ugly. It's a mess. So I wound up going to, it was almost like this psych ward place in Raleigh. And then from there, I went up to Hope Valley up in the mountains. Yeah. And spent some time up there.
I went to Hope Valley.
You went to Hope Valley?
I did. My first run, it was in Hope
Food
Valley.
was so good.
It's all southern.
Food was
southern
so
fried.
good, man.
Put on like 15 pounds.
Honestly, yeah, and a beard. And so I remember wrapping up my stay at Hope Valley, and I remember like nobody would come and get me. You know what I mean? Like there was like none of the siblings. All my siblings were like, "Oh hell no,
That's hopeful.
we're not doing that." And so, Tracy was like, yeah, somebody else got to handle this." And so that's just like symbolic of like just how much of a mess I was, you know, and how much of a storm I was, you know what I mean, through people's lives, and how much of a break they needed from me, you know. And so anyway, so whatever. So I finally make it back to Charlotte, and this is a significant part of my story because I go back to Charlotte. I leave Hope Valley. Hope Valley is a 12-step program, and I remember thinking like, okay, cool, this is just something I have to do. You know what I mean? Like I didn't understand it. I didn't comprehend it. I didn't understand how integral it would be to my health, you know, and how it would be a foundation. It could be a foundation of long-term recovery. I didn't take it seriously. I just thought I'd go to meetings. So I come back to Charlotte, going to AA meetings, you know, but I'm not doing any work. I'm not doing any internal work. I'm not doing any step work. I remember we did like a third step prayer, and my sponsor at the time like held my hand, and I was like, "What is this? What is going on here? Man? What is this all about?" Yeah, you know what I mean. But that's how like, you know, and it goes back to one of those things where it's like in the back of my mind, again, it's like one of those things I picked up in childhood, man. It's like, I don't need this. I'll figure it out. Yeah. You know, and I held on, just like I held on in school. I held on, and I picked up a 5-year chip, 2004, 2009. And I remember, you know, without any step work, without doing any internal stuff, and I was kindling. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like all it took was a spark. I remember I picked up a 5-year chip, and I think Tracy and the kids who were there, like it was, I don't know, I was trying to make a scene out of it, probably make it about me, right? You know what I mean? And like we do. And I remember an old timer in the meeting. He looked over whenever I got my chip, or they called my name, whatever. And he was like, he looked at me like, "How are you still sober?" Because I didn't think you were. To you for 5 years, man. I haven't seen you. You know what I mean? Yeah. Lift up a damn hand to do anything about what the real problem is. And so, so soon after that, I think I separated my shoulder. I did working, and I went to the doc, and the same doc. See, this is so crazy, and like why I think your message is so important, and you know the message that we all try to share is so important. The same doctor that knew that I was in 12-step program and gone to treatment, done all this stuff, you know, he writes me a script for 120.
Yeah. Here's 1,000 Percocets.
120 Percocet, like it was in the biggest fucking bottle, like you know what I mean, like it was 2 hands. God. And I remember leaving there, and I'd be like, you know. Because I hadn't done any step work, I had no spiritual defense, right? You know what I mean? That's the name of the game. It's like
this is not good.
I couldn't hold myself accountable. I wasn't calling anybody. I wouldn't let anybody know. And I remember thinking to myself, like, okay, cool. Well, if he knows I'm in a program, he just prescribed me this. Maybe I'm supposed to take them. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'd already had a long battle with opiates, right? Mm-hmm. And so I remember at the time thinking like, I'll just take 6. You know what I mean? It's been 5 years. So I just take 6. You know what I mean? And so it's one of those things where it's like, it's like one of those symbolic situations in my life to that illustrate just how important, you know, the work between the lines, between the meetings, after the meeting, before the meeting, you know what I mean? The solo work is how important it is. Off I went. And before I knew it, you know, I go to extremes, and before I knew it, like the pills wouldn't work anymore, and you know, it was either heroin, you know, or I was in a methadone clinic, one of the two. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so once you reach that level, there's not a whole lot you can really do without some sort of you know, somebody running interference on it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so there, you know, continued a pattern of like inconsistent behavior, inconsistent professional. You know, like just the ability to work, hold down a job, completely inconsistent. You know what I mean? Like I would have a couple great months or maybe even a year, put a year together.
And you're in
Charlotte
that would
just fall apart. I'm all over. Yeah, I'm in Charlotte. I'm working for a couple different chefs here, but I remember I was at the BLT and I was a mess at the BLT and they knew it, right? BLT in the Ritz-Carlton. And I was a mess at the Ritz-Carlton and they knew it. And before I could really even like address that situation, I'd found a job in Gastonia. You know what I mean? So I was just like bouncing around and really running. And so anyway, so that's what 2010 through 2013 looked like. And then towards the end of 2013, it's bad. You know, I'm mixing coke, I'm mixing heroin. You know what I mean? Like it's really, really bad. I'm around my family 1 minute, and the next minute I'm gone. You know, and so that's the kind of alcoholic and addict I am.
How old are your kids at this point?
At this point, well, Alan Gray was born in 07. Constance was born. She's an 03 baby. And so you're looking at, you know, 5, 6 years old for Alan Gray. And
are you still with their
10 or
mom at this
11.
point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. God bless her. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, but she'd had enough.
Yeah.
Just nothing she could do.
Everybody knew, you know what I mean? Like everybody knew, and bless her heart, man. Like all she wanted from me was just to be healthy and, you know, and be a dad. And I couldn't do it. So, 2013 rolls around.
Couldn't do it yet.
That's right. You know, I think one day I was just gone. I just left. And I think I made the conscious decision that it's just, and like that goes to show like how sick this disease is. And it's like, I ain't got time to be a dad. I damn sure don't have time to be a husband. I ain't got time to cook. You know, I got to get busy dying. Yeah. And so I just left.
That's the real pain right there, man.
It is, man. It is.
It's there.
It is. And so I'm busy dying, and I don't have time. I remember I got rid of my cell phone. I you know what I mean? And I just wanted to be left alone in the street, and that's what I did. You know, and so you know, the next 2 years I would continue to be on the streets. You know, occasionally hit the couch. You know, occasionally have a sister who would let me in the door. Occasionally maybe go home for a night or two, get a shower, clean up for a minute, and then I would return. Yeah, it was bottom. It was dark. It was super dark.
And you run that was around here.
I was here. I was over on State Street. Yeah, right, not too far from where I work now. Yeah, State Street in Tuckasegee, that neighborhood, and then South Boulevard. I'd run up and down South. Yeah, running and gunning. Fast forward to like 2000 and the end of 13. It's getting really, really bad, like dangerously bad. Like life's on the line, and it wasn't like I was drinking myself to death or using myself to death. It was the shit I was doing to get what I needed.
Oh yeah.
That was really frightening. And so, you know, I think I just was like, you know what, let me just try something different. Reached out for help, and I went away a couple times, a couple detoxes, and then treatment center down in South Carolina, in Sumter, any length, and I was there for like, I don't know, 3 months, something like that. Checked myself out, and then just resumed. Oh, it just resumed.
Damn it, Sam.
Yeah, it was
Thought
just
this
a
was
pause.
ending. All right,
no,
keep
it was
going.
just a pause, and then so the summer of 14, spring and summer and fall of 14 was just me on the street. You know, I think I had a job for about 5 minutes, and I bought a car. That was another 5 minutes. Never made a payment. You know what I mean? It was like it was just gross.
Give me that thing.
Yeah, it was just gross. And so anyway, so off to the street I went, and I mean, there's so much to unpack there. So much violence. Yeah. Zero loyalty. You know what I mean?
Fight for your life when you're out there like that.
It was
like
survival. It really was survival. Yeah. I mean, sleep. You know what I mean? Like sleeping in gas stations and behind dumpsters and you know, and then like with one eye open. It's really it's crazy. You know, and I'm truly lucky to still be here, and
hell yeah,
you know what I mean, and have a pulse. It's one of those things where, like, if we look back to the beginning of the conversation, I told you about, you know, willpower and the my processes for making decisions. It was like, man, I didn't know, you know what I mean? Like, I'm on my own, you know what I mean? I'll continue to make these decisions on my own, and that's how I function, you know, until the price of pain says otherwise, you know, and so when I went away. In November of 2014, it was just after I was assaulted in the street. And I was assaulted in the street because I was accused of being an undercover cop in the wrong neighborhood.
Yeah, that
right?
ain't good.
Yep. And so they wanted to kill me, right? And so when I went away, it wasn't to get sober. Yeah. It wasn't like, oh my God, you know, I want to be a dad. I want to be, you know what I mean? Like I want to reunite with my family. It was like, I don't want my kids to bury me. And so that was my impetus for leaving town. You know what I mean? Like it literally like 7 a.m. I'd been up for a couple of days. Walls are closing in. You know, I'd leave a trap house on South Boulevard, right across from the train station. And I jump on the train. First of all, I'm dope sick. You know what I mean? So I had to get some liquor. And I get some liquor, steal some liquor. I jump on the train. I go to the bus station downtown and call my mom. Say, I got to get out of here. You know what I mean? This is not a good situation. Like I'm in some serious trouble. And I was, if they would have found me, you know what I mean? Like, I'm certain that like, they wouldn't have finished me off. And so anyway, so there was no, I didn't know what was going to happen next. I just knew how to get out of Charlotte. So I take a bus to Myrtle, and I get off the bus in Myrtle, and I got one of my sisters there waiting on me. And, you know, and they just asked me, you know, you got to say the words. You want to get help? I said, I think I do. I definitely need to go somewhere. And so anyway, so whatever. So I wound up giving Any Length a call down in Sumter, and Any Length answers the phone, one of the counselors down there. And they were like, yeah, we've been waiting on him. He's been calling. So I was calling like 3 a.m. and leaving messages on their voicemail. And it's like, yeah, we've been waiting on this guy. I'm glad he's still alive.
Do you remember doing that?
No, I had no idea. None.
Wow.
Yeah, but it was, obviously it was a cry for help. You know what I mean? You know, like something within my moral compass said this is wrong. And so anyway, so off I go to Any Length, you know, and at this point I've got a shirt, I've got a pair of pants, and I've got a pair of shoes with holes in them, man. You know, and I think my sister took me to like a Goodwill on the way, and I got one more set of clothes, and off I went. And I remember getting there, and it was soon after I was assaulted. So I had, like my head was like bolted shut. I had 11 staples up here. All this was open up right here. So I had a bunch of stitches in my eye. You know, my nose had been broken. My shoulder had been separated.
Looking good.
Yeah. Right. Perfect.
Yeah.
And,
Street wounds.
Fresh out of Sunday school.
I mentioned the price of pain, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
dude, I know.
it's not a badge of honor. It shouldn't be that way, but that's just the way it was for me. And so anyway, so whatever. So I arrive at Any Length. I hit the couch before a bed would open up. And this is what I love about Any Length. Any Length is run by people in recovery. Most of the people at Any Length have already been through Any Length. Yeah. Right? And at Any Length, there is no set amount of time that you stay, because they understand the fact that everybody recovers on a different timeline. Like, recovery is not a one-size-fits-all scenarios, right? And so anyway, so they knew that, you know, that I was a fighter. You know, I'd probably try to flee, you know, at some point. Or they would know that I would probably do, because I've been to a bunch of treatments, so I knew what to say and how to say it. You know what I mean? Do the rehab lingo, and but they just sat on me, man. They wouldn't let me work any steps for like 3 months. You know, I'd walk into the office. I'd walk into the office. No, I'd walk in the office. Like, all right, what you got for me? What can I do? And they're like, yeah, go read how it works.
Again,
take a nap.
I've been doing that for 2 months. And so anyway, yeah, they're like, go ahead and do it. So that's what I had. So, but there was a reason behind that. Like, in order to understand the steps, you got to understand how it works. And I love them for that, because I had to go through that in a safe place, in a secure place, you know, where people understood what exactly was going on. And so anyway, so I think, you know, that stay, those words, the way they handled me saved my life, you know. And I remember, you would think like my rock bottom would be on the street, get my ass thrown out of a second floor window, right? You know what I mean? But it wasn't.
Normal people would think that.
Normal people would think that, right? Yeah, exactly.
We don't think that.
Right, exactly. So,
yeah,
but that wasn't my case. My case, I hit rock bottom at like 5 months of abstinence, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm in the treatment center, and I remember we were reading out of the big book, and it was page 95, third paragraph from the top, and it was working with others, and it says that the alcoholic cannot be pushed, prodded, or persuaded by his wife, family, or friends. If he has to find God, he has to find God from within. You know, and we read that on a Saturday morning, and I remember once that meeting was over, I just broke down, and I knew, like, if I was going to have to do this thing called life, then I was going to have ask for help. You know, some things were going to have to change.
Yeah. Dude,
so that's really the beginning of my journey.
It's so crazy to me, hearing so many people's recovery and healing journeys, and all the different, like, passages or relationships or interactions or talks that are like the point where it clicked. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like yours was that specific passage.
Yeah.
It's
pretty powerful.
It's interesting to me how, like, it's different for everybody.
Well, and you could have read that passage. You probably read that passage, you know, multiple times prior to that. It was that perfect
that
storm
day, that
timing,
time.
everything about where you were that made it hit.
Yeah, and it's almost like it read itself to me.
Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it spoke to me and said, "Look, dude, you know what I mean? It's just surrender. You know what I mean? Try something different." And then finally, I was like, "Fuck it." You know what I mean? Like I'll try this 12 and 12 thing you guys got hanging on the wall. It's not gonna work, but I'll do it.
Fuck it. Fuck it, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yep. And then from then, man, like, you know, I'm in this place where I'm like, I'm alone. I'm convinced that I'm born on the wrong planet. You know what I mean? I just didn't belong. You know what I mean? It was, and it was that feeling that I've been running from since I was a kid. 38 years old, man. 38 years old in another treatment center. I've walked out on a wife and 2 kids. I owed all kinds of banks money. You know what I mean? Like it was horrible. And this thing called life just didn't work for me. And I didn't understand why I was still here, you know? And from then, probably for the next month or so, you know, I figured that I would just live in an institution for the rest of my life. I was convinced of it.
Yeah.
I was really convinced of it.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That was huge.
Yeah.
That's deep, man.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they release you from any lengths, and then
Yeah. So,
No, absolutely. No. And
still living there?
that's another thing too, I
got to check in here in a little bit.
is like my, this disease, I just consider it a disease and disease manifested. And so about a month later, they'd had enough of me. You know, I've been living there, but I've been breaking rules. I was non-compliant. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just acting out. And you know what I mean? They just said, "Look, we love you, but we can't keep you like this.
Yeah.
You know, we have to hold you accountable." And so what happened next was, again, it was like key, like, and that's why I love Link so much. I'm always bragging on him. Is that you got to go. We need you out of here. I couldn't live. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't I wouldn't follow rules. You know what I mean? In like just like dating and going off premises and stuff like that. I was just breaking all the rules. So I couldn't. But that was my alcoholism, right? Like self-will run wild, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, they were like, "Look, I was like, I don't know where I'm going to go, what I'm going to do." And I was thinking I'd return to Charlotte with my kids and my wife were here, and they were like, "What you need to do is stay in Sumter, all right, and go to a goddamn meeting. Sit your ass in a meeting, you know what I mean? Try shutting your mouth for a minute, and see what happens. Help some people." And I was like, I remember thinking, I was like, I can do that. I think I can do that, you know. And so I rented a room in Sumter, and I moved in with a friend of mine that I grew up in Myrtle with that was living in Sumter. He'd already been through any length. He'd been sober a little bit, and I rented a room. I had like a few more pairs of clothes. I had no car, no bike, no nothing. And I did have a job because that was part of the Any Length curriculum. So you had to have a job while you went to treatment there. So I kept my job and I moved in. I rented this room. Yeah, I had an air mattress. That's right. I remember I had an air mattress. I went to Walmart, got one of those Walmart phones, and I would just walk to a meeting every single day. Every single day I'd walk to a meeting and walk back, and every single day I would wake up wondering if, I would want to use again. You know what I mean? I'd wake up literally wondering if this was going to be the day whenever I drank or used again, and I would think about that on my way to the meeting that I was walking to. Mm-hmm. And then eventually, first of all, I should say like the local recovery community down there wrapped their arms around me, and again, like I still consider myself different because I'm going to AA, but I have a drug history, you know what I mean? They didn't care. Yeah. And they were like, "Look, that's, you stick around long enough, you're us, that's not your problem. Your problem is yourself." You know what I mean? And so anyway, so I just loved that. I loved that. I loved being accepted. And so it made me wanted to just to keep on coming back, which I did. I kept my job. So eventually I bought a bike, and then eventually I bought a car. My first car was like this old Hyundai Elantra. I think I paid $750 for it, but had to make payments. You know what I mean? It was like one of those classic, like classic situations. Like the doors didn't work. Like it was great.
Cash payment.
Gotta get in on the
Yeah. But about that time, that was like, I started seeing, recovery benefits.
It's working.
Recovery benefits. Yeah. I was still being sponsored, and I had sponsees. Like I was doing the deal, and then. And only then did I start to return to Charlotte and kind of, be a part of my kid's life again. That was super special.
Something that stood out was those walks to the meetings, and every day not knowing if that was going to be the day you used again or relapsed or whatever. Like, I remember those thoughts and those feelings, and it was like, in my head, it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to use again, but I sure as hell hope it's not today. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to try to do whatever I can today to not make it today.
Yeah.
And then you string a few of those along, and that I'm going to probably use again becomes, I might not use again. And then that thing that we hated saying when we first got to the program, which is, I'm never fucking using again, we start saying that.
Yeah, because that's the way it always happened that way, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm one of those guys, maybe like you guys as well, that drank when I didn't want to drink.
Oh, yeah.
I used drugs when I didn't want to use drugs, man. Totally. I stole shit when I didn't want to steal shit. And so that was just what I knew. But what was cool about it was like, I think, what I love about the 12 steps is like, it's very pragmatic, right? You know what I mean? Here's your problem. Here's your solution. Are you willing to do what you got to do to bridge the gap? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so, I didn't understand what all was happening. All I knew was I was still sober. You know what I mean? And I still had a chance, and so anyway, so that's what kept me going.
Things kept getting better too.
And things kept getting better, and that's what kept me going.
So how'd you get back? So you get back to Charlotte. What was your reintegration? How did that look like with family and?
Hey,
and it starts
look at me.
He's better.
No, man, no. See,
give him some money.
History of this, and so, I come back and it's supervised. It's a supervised situation. And then, actually, I remember the very first time I got back, I went to a swim meet. Constance was a good swimmer. She's a really good swimmer. And I don't think she knew I was coming because I don't think her mom felt secure enough, you know what I mean, with my history to even let them know.
Her mom didn't know if you were going to make it or not.
Exactly. And I remember seeing her and she saw me. And look, so this is a cool, chapter of my life where I really learned about empathy. And I remember looking, she realized I was there. I'm at a swim meet somewhere in South Charlotte, fancy swimming pool. And she just smiled. Oh. And it's like, you know what I mean?
That'll
and she was
sober.
so fucking happy, man. Yeah. And,
oh man.
Yeah. And so we had this great afternoon together, and I'm sure that we went out to dinner, and I'm sure that, you know what I mean? We celebrated each other a little bit and then went back. But, I wound up living down in Sumter for 2 years, 2 years and change. And what happened was this, and this is like God does for us, we can't do it for ourselves, right? I remember soon after leaving Any Length, I was on Craigslist, looking for a chef position in Charlotte. Yeah. Well, this restaurant in Sumter posted a chef position in Charlotte's Craigslist, right? Wow. And this restaurant was super high end. It was kind of in my wheelhouse, what I'd done all my life. And so I was like, you know what I mean? So I'm looking at this, and it's in Sumter, and
lay it out in front of you.
And so whatever. So off I go to this restaurant, apply for a position as a line cook. I get hired finally after weeks. Very suspected, a guy living in Sumter, South Carolina with CIA and been across the country and around the world. I get this job, right? And it's this family, it's the Thompsons, and they play an instrumental role in shaping my life the next 2 years. And what I mean by that, and the chef, Raphael, was that everything that I was hearing in the rooms from a principle standpoint, open-minded, honesty, willingness, hard work, very blue collar. Selflessness. Yeah, I was feeling it. I was experiencing it in the restaurant that I was just hired at.
All a part of their culture.
Or part of the culture,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
And so everything that I was hearing in the meetings, I was seeing in real life. And so that was it was completely propelling. And so I found a home there. And I went up working there for 2 years. And how I got back to Charlotte was like this. I started as a line cook, and I worked my way up to a sous chef. They were expanding. They were opening more restaurants. And I'm sure that they had me in mind for the expansion. And so that has to be, that has to be said. But every Christmas they would hand out bonuses. They would hand out Christmas bonuses. And I got pulled in the office one December, and I thought for sure I was in trouble.
What did I do?
What did I do this time? And and they handed me an envelope, and in the envelope was, and I got to proceed by saying this. I asked God for the past 2 years when I would be able to move back to Charlotte and do this thing with my kids. So in this envelope was enough money for me to rent a U-Haul, put a deposit down for an apartment, and set up shop here in Charlotte. Yep. And I get the envelope, open it up, and I'm like, holy shit, this is wild. You know what I mean? And part of me couldn't accept it because I knew what I was going to do with it, and they probably knew it too, but they were the type of family where it was like, no, you've earned this. You've been the most consistent employee we've had in years. And so whatever. So I get this bonus, but I hear the word consistent. And consistent I'd never been called consistent in my life ever, and I had all kinds of accolades. You know what I mean? I went to school. I've worked at some really nice restaurants, but I've never been called consistent. And so anyway, so it meant a lot to me. And soon after that, I'm back in Charlotte, January 2017.
And then it's just like,
yeah. I mean, there's another example. So I go to work at Fran's filling station over in Dilworth.
Oh yeah.
Yep, you guys heard of that?
I know Fran.
Yep, so I worked for Fran for about 6 months. Something told me like that wasn't the place I needed to be for whatever reason, right? And I don't know, we weren't in alignment on what I wanted to do and what the expectations were for the position that I was in. And I remember, and this is another gotcha moment, man, but I was on the back steps of Fran's filling station, and I was on Craigslist again looking for another position, another option. And I see an ad from Upstream. All right. And immediately I'm like, oh man, and if I didn't mention this earlier, I'd already had a stint with Upstream in the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
I'd already been there. And so I call the chef, Scott. And I said, hey, I'm looking at your ad. I was like, is there any chance, we can sit down and have a conversation? You have to understand, like, everybody knew, like, what I went through was no big secret here in Charlotte, especially in the chef community. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so I was damaged goods. And I wasn't even sure if he'd take my call, much less sit down for a conversation. Scott answers the phone, and whatever, we have a brief conversation, and he's like, there's no ad. I didn't place an ad. And I was like, I'm looking at the ad. He's like, I don't need it. You know what I mean? Like, that position's been taken. And I'm like, all right, well, that's fine. Thank you anyway. Thank you for your time. And before I hung up, he goes, I tell you what, let's have a cup of coffee, meet me at Mimosa Grill downtown. All right. And we'll take it from there. And he goes, but I'll tell you right now, we're going to do a drug test. You know what I mean? We're going to do a background check. I said, all right, so far so good. Yeah. I'll take that. Yeah. I'll take that. You know what I mean? But it was another gotcha moment. Like, so there was no ad. I assume it was, it was saved from another search they had in the past and just came up in my search engine. And so whatever. So we met. One thing led to another, and I got the position of chef de cuisine at Upstream.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
That's nuts, dude.
Yep. I found my flow, man. I was immersed in recovery here in Charlotte, regular meetings, regular schedule. I was grounded. I had good people around me. And I loved to cook, and I was just, you know what I mean. So I'm at Upstream, and I'm just in a good place, man. I'm repairing the relationship with my kids.
This is 17, 18?
17, 18, yeah. Okay. 17, 18. Things are starting to line up. Like, the promises that they talk about are starting to come true. And I'm still sober, and that meant the most. And so...
how much time you got at this point?
My sobriety date is November 16th, 2014.
Okay, so you're coming up 4
years. Yeah, 4 years.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and so, you know what I mean? And so I'm just, in a position of gratitude. We're doing our thing at Upstream. Upstream had been through a couple of years where it's a bit turbulent. They had some, they couldn't find the right person for that position. And so I acknowledged that, and did what I had to do to kind of steer the ship in the right direction a little bit. And so anyway, so whatever. So we assembled a great team. Things were going really, really well. And then the Food Network calls. Right?
just randomly.
Food Network calls.
Hey, you want to come on?
Yeah. And so anyway, so this is a cool, like, recovery story right here, because the Food Network calls, and one of my biggest defects, I'll put it out there, is like it's just arrogance, right? So the Food Network calls, and they're like, hey, we'd like to talk to you about being on the Bobby Flay show.
I bet you would.
Yeah. And I was like, no, fuck, I don't even fucking watch that show. No thanks. Thanks, but no thanks. And that would be so dishonest of me to be on that show. And because I don't even watch it. And so anyway, but another part of me, the recovery part of me, was like, I should probably ask, people with experience, what they thought of the scenario.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to 3 people.
Dude,
Do
idiot.
it. Do it. And do it.
Literally, they were like, what? Don't ever think it, man. You know what I mean? Do it. And so one was Mark Jacksina, Scott Wallen, and then our publicists at the time. And so anyway, so I went to all 3 of them, and like unilaterally, they were like, "What? Huh?
Yeah.
Like, do it, dude.
Why would you question that?
Do it, yeah." And so anyway, so one thing led to another. We got through the interview process. They I'll go ahead and say it. They loved the part about recovery.
Oh, hell
You know what I
yeah.
mean? And felt like
Eat that shit up.
Milk that shit.
Yep, and felt like that would be an intriguing storyline, for reality TV based program, and so last but not least, I had to clear a few obstacles. I felt like I had to do the show, and that was one of the, that was one basically about my story, and so again, like I think that's a powerful example of living in a collective, sober collective, right? So I've got a sponsor, I've got people in my life, that have been sober with experience, and I went to them and I said, look, man, like, I don't know how this is going to sit. I don't know if I'm prepared for this. I don't know if this is something I want to do, is to put my business out here. You know what I mean? Because it affects a lot of people. I'm a dad. You know what I mean? Like, it's a tangled web, and I wasn't sure if I was prepared to do that. And that's a lot to ask. I knew what was coming if I went up and did the show. And they said,
thank God you did.
yeah. And they said, no, you can help some people. And I said, I can. They're like, yeah, man, you can help some people. Tell your story, and and be transparent for a fucking change. You know what I mean? Like, think of this differently. And then of course, I have a history of like, again, like alluding to what I started talking about whenever we began this conversation was like internalizing, and and willing my way through certain situations. And so I remember my sponsor was like, and stop internalizing. This would be a real good time for you to stop internalizing what's going on inside you. You'll be amazed at what would happen next. And so anyway, so off I went. We did the show. We filmed it in May of 19. I wound up winning somehow. Bob Saget was there. It was cool.
Hey!
It was really cool.
Rest in peace,
Saget.
Bob.
Rest in peace, Bob. Bob had a night the night before, let me tell you.
Yeah.
That was hilarious. It was a fun day, long day, 14 hours we filmed.
What dish? Lobster risotto?
Yeah, lobster risotto. Never lived that one down. That's a whole.
That was it. It was one shot. It was just one day.
One day.
Wow.
Yeah. He was doing 2 shows a day, AM and PM. So here's the cool part about that, right? Okay, so you can't say anything when you do these shows.
Yeah.
You can't say anything because it's reality TV. And so I do the show. I win. I'm in New York. Come back to Charlotte, and I'm wondering when they're going to air it. You know what I mean? I was told 2 to 3 months. Yeah. It took 9.
Wow.
9 months.
You're telling everybody.
I just no. I like forgot. I forgot I was even on it. You know what I mean? We go into the fall in the restaurant business, and like it's all that's all consuming, right? Yeah. And so anyway, so they finally aired it January 26th or 27th of 2020, right? And what's significant about that, and again, it's like one of those God does for us, right? In March of 2020, I would lose my job. In January 20, we aired the show. It picked up a lot of traction from an audience standpoint on social media.
Yeah.
And so whenever I lost my job, I came up with this idea of doing Your Farm's Your Table. I had this audience on social media that I could reach, thanks to the show. And they really like propped up this dumb idea I had for a meal delivery business in the middle of a pandemic without a menu. And so anyway, so looking back on it, like everything just happened
for
a
storm.
reason.
Yeah.
It continues to happen for a reason.
Golly.
Yeah. And so,
Dude, that's freaking
yeah,
awesome.
man. So I went from like 2 followers, probably, my 2 sisters, 2 out of 4, you know what I mean? To like
2 out of 4.
a couple of thousand. And then, you know what I mean? Like, so, but that's how the business was started. It was started on social media.
That is so good. Let's start with Your Farm's Your Table. I mean, you touched on that, but give our listeners exactly what that is.
Yeah. So Your Farm's Your Table. So it began when I was laid off from Upstream, right? And again, it's like one of those tools we pick up from sobriety, get out of self and into service, right? And it'll right size what's going on between your head. I'm one of 11 million people that were laid off during the pandemic in food and beverage. And so I was pissed, I was going through a lot. I was angry. I was sad. I was, I didn't know, I just didn't know what, why, and all the things, right? Yeah. And so I didn't know what to do, next, but I leaned into recovery, and I thought that if I kind of redirect my energy towards helping other people, the farmers, you know what I mean, and the community at the same time, that I would find some sort of healing, you know, from the wounds that were experienced and being laid off, and my life coming to a complete screeching halt. And so anyway, so that was the premise behind Your Farm's Your Table. And so we did that. It was 3 courses, $30. You know, I'd go to a farm each day at farmer's market, you know, bring it back to the house, engineer a menu, another dumb idea. And then cook it, box it, bag it, and deliver it. And out of my apartment over in Cotswold. And so that's what we did. Eventually, my sister and my brother-in-law wound up jumping on board and helping out, and
more and more orders.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, what happened was I delivered to a food writer, and she just loved it and did a write-up in the Charlotte Axios, which was formerly Charlotte
that'll
Agenda.
help.
And so anyway, so yeah, we went from doing 10 a day to 20 to 30 to 40, and so that's that. So then it took off.
Sweet. All right. So the website, so people can.
Yeah, yourfarmsyourtable.com.
Boom. There it is. All right, Ben's friends.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, a lot of our listeners know one of our past guests, Steve Palmer, was the co-founders, but you are the Charlotte co-leader, Charlotte chapter co-leader. Give us a little bit about the local chapter and the work y'all are doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll echo what Steve probably said, is like the industry that we love and that we're passionate about has done so much for us. It's about time we did something for the industry, right? You know, and so we want to give back. It's another opportunity to get out of self and into service. And so what they came up with was a fellowship of recovered individuals to support those seeking recovery or sober curious. And so, and not affiliated with 12-step, yet it's modeled after it. And so so we just want to offer a safe space for people to come on a weekly, daily basis, you know, to come in and share their struggles or their strengths, one or the other, or both. And, you know, and have an opportunity to hopefully save some lives along the way and get some people some help, you know, and change the industry as a whole. The industry has been ravaged by addiction. I've told you my story. Like that was normal. Like to get high and work is normal. Yeah. I mean, I did it for 20 years. You know, and so what we want to do is create, you know, a sustainable future, but also make an impact on people on an individual basis. So Ben's Friends is where it's at. Ben'sFriendsHope.com is the website. We do an online meeting via Zoom every day at 1:00 Eastern. There's 3 p.m. meetings. We do an in-person here in Charlotte, Monday mornings at 11. I love it, man.
Where is that? Is it Oku?
Oku, yeah. I mean, like just this week, and just to brag on the group here in Charlotte, you know, we had 2 people that went off to long-term treatment this week. Not 1, but 2, you know, and so that's a tribute to, you know, the collective as a whole. You know, I think the message that that Mickey and Steve started and continue to share is that, you know, you're not alone in this industry, man. You know, and food and beverage is an easy place to hide out if you're a drug addict, if you're an alcoholic. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just because of the pace, the hours. We're extremists. You know what I mean? So it's an extreme atmosphere to work in. It's an easy place to hide. You know, but pain is pain, and you know, we just want you know, anybody out there that's struggling or has struggled, or you know, or just might have some questions about their health. You know, that know that there's a safe space to come to. Open hearts, open minds. We'll be there every Monday.
Love it.
Tell us about Restaurant Constance.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Yeah. Well, I told you that you know, the scene at the pool whenever I returned.
Yeah.
First time seeing them after, you know, I think I'd been gone for a couple of years. And so anyway, I just cherished that moment. You know what I mean? I mean, like she had every reason, you know what I mean, to
not
you know,
smile.
want to disassociate herself with me, you know, a dad that wasn't there and couldn't be there for a long time. And was there with a big smile and open arms and a big old open heart. And so when I realized through recovery, by making recovery my priority, my number one priority, that I could still cook, you know, and I could do it at a high level, you know, that if I ever opened up a restaurant, I would name it after her. And so that's Restaurant Constance. That's the story behind the name. And as for the restaurant itself, like there's all kinds of concepts in Charlotte. There's all kinds of concepts across the country, right? Beer breweries and Italian place steakhouses. This is a non-concept restaurant. Whatever the farmers grow, we'll write the menu with. And so really the concept, if you had to ask me to hold a gun to my head, it would be listening, you know, an opportunity to connect through food which we can still agree on. You know what I mean? The world's upside down and crazy with politics and everything else, but we can still agree on a good steak or a good short rib or whatever the case may be. And for people to come in and give us an opportunity to tell stories of the people that are behind the curtain in food and beverage in Charlotte. Those are the farmers and suppliers that take care of us.
No concept. What cuisines do you lean towards? What are you proficient in?
I would say that my style has evolved. I grew up in an Italian place. I was trained in French food. I spent the past 3 years studying Japanese. I worked in Mexico City. You know what I mean? So I have a lot of history to lean on whenever I consider the menu. But really, it's all about minimalism, and saying more with less. Yeah. And so that's what to expect.
All right.
God, I can't wait. What's the time frame on that?
December 5th.
Like doors are open December.
Doors are open December 5th. So we should have some soft opening, family, friends, sober people, champagne podcast before then.
Yeah. Perfect.
And for y'all to come in and help us iron out the wrinkles a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And get the show on the road. I mean, we're going to have to open up like we've been open for 6 months. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We can't open up like a new restaurant. We have to open up like we've been open,
Yeah.
and have our shit together. So that's the plan.
Perfect.
So we'll be there. Sam Diminich, why do you care?
Well, here's the thing. When I could not be there for myself, right? When I did not believe for myself, when I was a shell of a human being, people cared. Dennis Wormsley, my hero, I've been sober 25 years, cared. You know what I mean? When you're sober that long, when you've lived a life of 25 years of sobriety, not a lot of people still come around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not a lot of people are there for newcomers. This man was there for me, and I never forget where I come from. Whether it be even my parents. You know what I mean? Like I love them. I never forget. I just never forget those that are there for me, and so I think it's a duty and it's an honor to be there for others. And I just couldn't. I don't know what else I can really add to that. People were there for me. I need to be there for others. I think
perfect.
there's so much to gain from that. There's the paradox, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In order to keep what we have, we have to give it away.
Yes.
And so that's everything.
Chef Sam Diminich, everybody, in the flesh.
Thanks for being here, man.
Time to go to work.
Yeah, can we get out of here and go to work? The information and opinions shared on this podcast are solely those of the hosts and guests and are not a substitute for medical advice. If you feel like you may need professional help, here are some resources. For the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration hotline, call 1-800-662-4357 or visit smsa.gov. For listeners in the Charlotte, North Carolina community, visit dilworthcenter.org or call 704-372-6969 or visit theblanchardinstitute.com or call 704-288-1097.